Now I'm extremely honored to introduce our keynote speaker, a man who personifies that Grady spirit, that intangible mix of leadership, drive, and personality. We often say that Grady graduates the talent that leads the world's great brands. Nowhere is that proven more than in the example of our convocation speaker today. Scott Williamson represents the ultimate alumni leader. As Vice President for Public Affairs and Communications at Coca-Cola North America, he directs public affairs and PR for all Coke brands and sports and entertainment holdings. That's a big job with global implications, but on any given day, he might email that he's on his way out to speak to a sports communication class or to meet with students whose development he cares so much about. Scott helped launch Coke's First Generation Scholarships Initiative at UGA, and he advises that wonderful program. He created the Coca-Cola Grady Public Affairs Internship Program, the college's most competitive, a real leadership track that has prepared and mentored and often hired Grady students since 2001. Scott served on the Grady Society Alumni Board and now serves on the Grady Board of Trust. And Scott manages Coca-Cola support for the Peabody Awards, Grady's most luminous brand, continuing a tradition begun by Grady grads at Coke since the days of Carlton Curtis and Earl Leonard. We asked for anecdotes about Scott to introduce him to you today, but what we found was that everybody said anecdotes were tough for Scott because Scott always puts other people and important causes forward and consummately stands behind, a real art, as you know. On his first day of grad school, we hear that when he asked why he was enrolled at Grady, Scott said his wife told him to. Thank you, Debbie, who's also with us today, for that sage advice. And we're told that it was Scott's late mother who gave him that thoughtful, humble confidence that Scott inspires in our students, a real grace of leadership and love for Grady and Georgia and one's profession. So a thank you to your mom's memory also, and to you, Scott, for being with us today on the happiest day in the Grady calendar. Plus a thank you to Coke for being one of Grady's oldest and most loyal learning partners. Scott?
Wow, when I hear things like that, I wish my mom was here because she's the only one who would believe all that. But it is a great pleasure for me to be here. Dean Davis, members of the Grady faculty, distinguished guests, family, friends, and mostly you students. Thank you for allowing me to share in your day. My wife is here with me today, and I'm very pleased about that as well because, as Dean Davis said, she was the one who actually worked and paid the bills so that I could achieve my dream of graduating from the University of Georgia. Graduates, congratulations, y'all. I mean, seriously, 4 or 5 or 6 years? But you did it. You're here. You're this close. People doubted you. I mean, you may have doubted yourself, but you're here. You are this close to graduating from the best college of journalism and mass communications in America and one of the finest universities in the land. I mean, give yourselves a hand. I mean, seriously, can you believe it? I mean, does it feel a little weird? I hope that it does, because that's the kind of achievement that you're on the precipice of having done. I want to talk to you a little bit today about something I call embracing now. And it has a lot to do with what you do when you leave here, but I don't want you to miss the opportunity to embrace now, today, tomorrow, as you go about doing things with your family and friends. When you look at your classmates and your mom and your dad and your families over the course of the next couple of days and you meet them eye to eye, I want that to linger. I want you to lock a little longer than you would otherwise. When you go walk by the arch to get your picture taken, stare at it a little bit. When you go downtown, just kind of soak it in. The smells, the sounds, what it looks like. You won't soon feel the sense of satisfaction that you have today and tomorrow. So relish it. Embracing now. This is your time. It may not be the best time, but it is your time. Unfortunately, you can't step outside, jump in a DeLorean with a flux capacitor, and have it take you to a different time of your choosing. All the students are looking at each other and saying, what's a DeLorean? What's a flux capacitor? And all the parents, like, ask mom and dad or whoever you're with, they'll be able to tell you. The point I want to make is this is your time, so grab it. You're about to leave this warm, fuzzy cocoon of support and positive reinforcement for a world that is still run by my generation and the generation before mine. And we are not like you. We're crusty old fogies, and we come from a different time, back when dinosaurs ruled the earth and only the winning team got a trophy. When there were no medals for just showing up, winning was the only thing that was rewarding, and losing was met with bitterness and scorn. Being on the losing end every once in a while kind of hardened us, and it gave us an edge. I'm not saying that my generation is better for it. In many ways, you are better off having grown up in an environment that favors collaboration over confrontation, supportive rather than competitive relationships, valuing the good of the team over the individual, and positive reinforcement at home and at school. But the business world that you're going to enter, whether you're an ad major or a PR major or a journalism major or magazines or social media, whatever it is that you're going to go do, they're not quite like that yet. It's more like this. You're about to graduate with an A, B, J. Those three letters, or maybe an MA, or perhaps even a PhD. And folks like me are out there, and they're saying, all right, Miss ABJ, all right, Mr. ABJ, come on out. We will teach you the rest of the alphabet. My message to you is that this is nothing to fear. It is something to be embraced. You are smarter at 22 than I am right now. But you're not as experienced or wise, so what can you do? You can embrace the opportunity and you can work your tail off. I mean, work like you've never worked before. Commit yourself to being the person in your organization, whatever it is, that will not be outworked. Embrace that moment. Embrace now. Listen, here's a little secret. Nobody expects very much of you right now. For the first 3 months, or even maybe the first year of your job. So take advantage of that. Your margin for error is only going to get narrower as you progress in your career. So dive in. Fail while you're moving forward, soak it all up, and learn everything you can from those old fogies like me who are going to be working all around you. When Dean Davis asked me to speak with you, I confess I really had no idea what I was going to say. So I did what I always do when I'm faced with a challenge of this type. I went to visit my mentor. His name is Earl Leonard. He is 35 years retired Senior Vice President of Global Public Affairs and Communications for Coca-Cola. At the apex of his career, he managed all public affairs for the company in 206 countries. So I went to see him, and I was pouring through all of the old speeches that he had given, because he had given innumerable ones, and I was looking for something, frankly, that I could just steal. And I realized that I'm not him. I have neither his gift for oratory or his incredible life experience. So I looked at him somewhat exasperated, and I said, and by the way, he's a Grady grad and a Georgia Law grad. I said, Mr. Leonard, what am I going to tell these folks and their families? What possible counsel can I give them that'll help them along their way? And he reminded me that people like hearing stories. So he said, tell them your story, the one about why I hired you. And I said, you mean because of my keen intellect and incredible writing skills and my creativity and just sort of the general awesomeness that sort of surrounds me like an aura? And he said, no. He said, the real one. So here's the story of how I got my job at Coke. I was a graduate student and an intern at Coca-Cola from the Grady College. And I had the great privilege of traveling with Mr. Leonard across the country and around the world, really, for the first few years after I started working there. But this one particular trip, I was at the airport with him, and he stopped to get his shoes shined. And he asked me if I wanted to get my shoes shined, and I said, no, sir, my shoes are fine. And he must have assumed that that was because I couldn't pay for it. So he said, it's okay, I'll pay for it, just get your shoe shined. And I said, no, thank you, Mr. Leonard, I really, my shoes are fine. And he says, why don't you want to get your shoe shined? And I said, because as a little boy, my father taught me how to shine my own shoes, and I really haven't found anybody who does it as good as me. We got to the hotel in Washington, D.C., and I am just enamored with the idea that for the first time, I'm going to be staying in a place where the door to my room doesn't open into a parking lot, I sheepishly sort of asked the lady behind the counter if there's an ironing board and an iron somewhere in the building. And she said, young man, every room has its own ironing board and its own iron. And he looked at me and said, well, why on earth do you need an ironing board and an iron? And I said, Mr. Leonard, I'm looking at the schedule, and we were about to go to a dinner at the State Department, which was true. And I want to make sure that my shirt's pressed. Years later, at an event at Coca-Cola, that was on a panel where there were a bunch of University of Georgia graduates all working at Coca-Cola, and Mr. Leonard had filled the auditorium with University of Georgia students, and it was a Q&A portion of that event. The question came up about how we got our jobs, and I launched into this lengthy explanation of the importance of writing well and being objective-oriented and understanding the financials of the company and how our business works, and he interrupted me in front of all those people. And he said, wait a minute. That's not why I hired you. I hired you because you shined your own shoes and you ironed your own shirt. I was speechless. But over the years, the more I've pondered that moment, the prouder I've become of it. To him, those two things mattered. So what's the takeaway for you? I think it's this: pay attention to the little things because they matter. No job is too small to give your best effort. Sweat the details. Those entry-level jobs are all about the little things. Do them well. They are the critical things. They are the must-dos. They are the table stakes, because you never know who's watching, and you never know what's important to them. Now, to balance all that stuff about working as hard as you possibly can, let's talk a little bit about remembering what's important. I have this game that I play whenever I find that my professional life is encroaching too much on my personal life. I call it the house or office is on fire question. And I encourage you to do it. I literally do this. I say, okay, the house is on fire, and I know that my family is safe. I can grab one thing, or maybe two. What do I grab? The office is on fire. All of my colleagues are safe. I have maybe a second to grab something. What is the thing I'm going to take? And that thing, or things, gives me insight into what is ultimately important to me and allows me to kind of recenter myself. And that thing has changed over the course of time. It's not always the same. So, if I'm at home, the house is on fire, I know my family is safe, I grab my Bible. The one my mom and dad gave me when I was a young man. It's crammed with church bulletins. It's got sort of, sermon notes written all around the borders. There are verses that are highlighted that have compelled me or confused me or convicted me or comforted me. I grab that. There's this hard drive on our desk next to our computer that has virtually every picture and video that my wife and I have ever taken of our two children, Tyler and Hannah. I would grab that. That speaks to me as to what's important. If I'm at work, There's really only one thing I grab, and it's this big, thick manila folder. And if you spend any time with me in the office, you know it. You see me draw on it, and you know where it is in my office. And it does not contain the secret formula to Coca-Cola. What it does contain is pictures, snippets of paper with quotes on them, my very first press release that has my name and phone number in the contact area. It's written in 1993. Was anybody even born in 1993? I'm just curious. Maybe. It's got stacks of thank you notes from students and former interns and colleagues and folks that I've just spent time with over the course of 21 years at Coke. Let me tell you what's not in it. There's not a single performance appraisal in there. There's not a single letter from HR about a raise or a promotion or a new title. Only memories of good times with friends and colleagues and students and interns, inspiring words, moments of pride, some moments of failure. A big folder full of memory and experience and wisdom, and I would grab that for sure. So, men and women of Grady, you are going to be awesome at whatever you choose to do. I'd wish you luck, but I don't think you're going to need it. You are smart. You are as ready as the best college of journalism and mass communications in America can make you. What you need now is the experience and the wisdom that comes with it. What I do wish for you is success, however you define it, and achieved through hard work. That may mean material and financial reward, or it may not. Remember that sometimes the reward for a job well done is simply to have done it. So embrace now. Dive in. I also wish for you a career and a life that leaves you with a fat manila folder full of great pictures and thank you cards from folks you've helped along the way. Dozens of scraps of paper with a great quote or a memory or a thought scrawled on each one. The kind of collection that reflects a person who always remembered what was important. If you do all this, if you embrace now and dive in and you remember what's important and you shine your own shoes, you'll be just fine. Grady graduates, thank you again for allowing Debbie and me to share this important day with you and your families, and God bless you.